The Seattle Seahawks just turned a so-called trap game into a warning shot for the entire league. 1 week removed from surviving an emotional battle with the Rams and staring straight at a season-defining showdown with the Niners, they walked into Carolina in bad weather, early body clock, playoff-level pressure on the Panthers, and still walked out looking like the team nobody wants to see in January. The Seahawks are now sitting at 13 wins and only 3 losses with 6 straight victories. That is not a hot streak anymore. That is a profile, and the rest of the NFL can feel it. This is not hype built on one lucky shootout or one miracle comeback. It is built on a formula that keeps showing up in every kind of game. They just went on the road and beat Carolina by a score of 27-10, while holding the Panthers to under 150 total yards. The first half looked flat, social media was restless, and you could feel fans worrying that this would finally be the week the slow start caught up to them. Then the second half hit. The run game woke up, the defense slammed the door again, and suddenly, that ugly game started to look like the exact kind of cold weather fight you have to win if you want home playoff games and a real shot at the Super Bowl. When a team can look that off for that long and still win by 17, that is when people in other buildings start to get nervous. The scary part is that this whole surge is built from the ground up, not from some fragile, passing fireworks, show that disappears when the wind picks up. You see it every drive, when Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet lean into contact, turn simple calls into body blows, and force defenses to live in stress from the first quarter to the last whistle. Against Carolina, the Seattle backs pushed the total on the ground past 160 yards and ripped off the kind of long run that flips a game on its head. If this is what the Seahawks look like in a sloppy trap spot, wait until you see what that same ground attack does when the entire game plan is built around it, because that is where this story really starts to get dangerous. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Seahawks and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. Every scary team has one thing they can lean on when everything feels tight. And for the Seattle Seahawks, that thing is the run. When people glance at the season numbers for Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, nothing jumps off the page at first. You do not see 10 different long touchdown runs or silly video game averages. What you see on the field is different. You see 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, again and again, until the defense finally loses patience, stuffs the box, and suddenly realizes the clock, the field position, and the energy of the game all belong to Seattle. That is how a defense quietly breaks before the scoreboard even tells the story. Carolina, you could feel that slow squeeze every time Kenneth Walker lowered his pads into traffic, and every time Zach Charbonnet refused to go down on first contact. The Panthers' front did not get gashed on every snap, but they kept having to deal with second and short, third and manageable long drives where the Seahawks refused to get cute. Then came the moment where Zach Charbonnet finally ripped a big gain, and you could almost feel Carolina sag. All those earlier snaps, all those collisions, had built to that run. By the time Seattle had pushed past 160 yards on the ground, it was obvious that the Panthers' defense was reacting, not attacking, and that is exactly where this style of football wants you. The real danger is what this kind of rushing attack does to the math for everyone else on the field. When a defense is forced to walk that extra safety into the box just to survive. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. The field opens up for Sam Darnold, for JSN, for Cooper Kupp, for Rashid Shaheed, for AJ Barner slipping out of a fake block into the flat. One wrong step and a simple play action call turns into a chunk gain over the top, or a tight end jogging into the end zone untouched. If this is how the run game tilts a tough road game, imagine what happens when the defense sells out even harder against it, because that is when the pressure flips from the front 7 to the secondary and drops straight onto the shoulders of Sam Darnold, and that is where the story turns next. The wild thing about this Seattle run is that the biggest reason they can actually win the whole thing is also the one piece that could blow it up with a single throw. That is the life you live with Sam Darnold. On one drive, he looks like the calm veteran who has seen every coverage and will slice you up on 3rd and long. On the next snap, he trusts his arm just a little too much and puts the ball in a window that only exists in his head. That tension is what makes this offense so dangerous. It is never timid, never scared to push the ball, but it also knows that one bad decision in the red zone can flip a playoff game before you even feel like it has started. Look at what just happened in Carolina. It was not a pretty air show, but it did not need to be. In tough conditions, Sam Darnold still stacked enough completions to keep the chains moving and then hit the throws that mattered once the run game had worn the Panthers down. The problem is that every Seahawks fan can still see that end zone interception in their mind. JSN has man coverage, there is space to give your star a shot, and Sam Darnold takes it. But the defender plays it like he is the receiver, and suddenly a near touchdown turns into a turnover that never should have left his hand. That is the thin line this passing attack walks. When Sam Darnold plays within himself, uses his eyes, trusts the check down, and lets JSN, Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, and AJ Barner do the work after the catch, this group looks like a complete championship offense. When he forces throws, the whole building holds its breath. The scary part for the rest of the league is that Seattle does not need Sam Darnold to be perfect. They just need him to cut out the gifts. With the way these receivers separate in one-on-one looks, and with how often defensive coordinators have to roll extra help toward JSN, even a clean, boring version of Sam Darnold is good enough to win 3 or 4 playoff games in a row. The key question now is simple and ruthless. Can he protect the ball when the stakes rise and the windows shrink? Or will that one late throw to the wrong color jersey show up at the worst possible time? Because if he does slip, if he does make that one mistake that swings momentum, there's only one reason Seattle can still survive it, and it lives on the other side of the ball where this pass rush and front seven turn every opposing quarterback into a target. Every quarterback in this league talks about pressure, but they feel something different when the Seattle Seahawks roll out their front. It starts with DeMarcus Lawrence, the tone setter who can turn a normal snap into a disaster with one swipe at the football, and it does not stop there. When Carolina needed a drive late, he lined up on 3rd and 6, beat his man clean, and buried Bryce Young before the route could even develop. That was not a highlight in a vacuum. That was the final hit in a game where the pocket kept closing a little faster every series, and the Panthers quarterback never looked fully relaxed for a single dropback. What makes this group scary is not just one star, it is the constant wave. You rotate from DeMarcus Lawrence to Boy Moff, then to Uchenna Nwosu, and the energy never dips. Inside, you see Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy walking guards back into the lap of the quarterback while Riley Mills flashes as the young interior piece who already looks like he belongs in this room. The stat sheet might say 2 sacks or a handful of hits, but that hardly captures the way Bryce Young spent the entire afternoon throwing off his back foot, rushing reads, and bailing from clean pockets because his internal clock had been shattered by constant movement around him. When Derek Hall is fully back in the mix, this front will be even deeper, which is a nasty thought for anyone trying to block them in January. The real damage shows up in the way offenses have to call games. You cannot just sit in long developing concepts when DeMarcus Lawrence, Boy Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Riley Mills are trading snaps and staying fresh. You start cutting routes short, you lean on quick throws, you pray your screens hit before a defensive end reads them and blows them up. That is when the mistakes come, because hurried passes and panic decisions are exactly what this defense is built to punish. And the scary truth is that this front is only the first wall. Even when an offense somehow gets the ball out on time, it still has to deal with linebackers and defensive backs who close space, tackle clean, and turn shaky throws into takeaways. The pass rush might be the first thing you notice, but the part that really keeps offensive coordinators up at night lies behind it. When a quarterback drops back against Seattle and thinks he finally has a safe option, that is when Julian Love shows up. You saw it against Carolina. Bryce Young locks his eyes on the route he wants, ignores the easy check down sitting in the flat, and tries to rip a throw to the outside. Julian Love reads him from the snap, slides under the route, and steals the ball like he knew the call before the huddle even broke. That is not a lucky bounce. That is the standard in a secondary where every snap feels like the window is shrinking by the second, and one slow read can flip the game. The corners and hybrid pieces wrap that pressure around the whole field. Rick Woolen uses his length to erase vertical shots that other teams hit every week. Devin Witherspoon moves all over the formation. One play, blitzing from the slot, the next play driving on an out route like he was running it himself. When injuries hit, Ty Okada steps in and tackles like he has been starting for years, while Kobe Bryant fills his role with the same fire when he is healthy. Then you add the second level. Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas do not just clean up tackles. They close space so fast that short passes feel like traps, not safe calls. And in that big nickel role, Nick Emenwore blurs the line between safety and linebacker, filling gaps in the run game, one snap, and carrying a tight end up the seam on the next without looking out of place. All of that together is why yards after catch vanish against this group, and why completion totals can look normal while the impact of those completions stays tiny. A quarterback finally survives the rush from DeMarcus Lawrence and Boy Mafe, gets the ball out on time, and still ends up watching Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon, or Nick Emenwore drive through a receiver for a short gain or a breakup. That constant sense that there is no easy answer, no safe part of the field, is what turns long drives into stalled series and keeps the score tilted in Seattle's favor, even on a messy day. And when you put that kind of back end behind a dominant front, you start to understand how a so-called simple regular season matchup in Carolina quietly turned into a message to the rest of the conference about what this team can do when everything is on the line. Everything about this Carolina trip screamed danger before the ball was even kicked. You had the emotional high of beating the Rams still hanging in the air, the monster showdown with the Niners waiting on the other side, an early body clock start on the road, wet air, heavy field, and a Panthers team fighting to win their division with real pressure on Tampa in the background. This is the kind of spot where good teams get lazy, fall behind, and then spend 3 hours trying to dig out of a hole they created for themselves. For most of the first half, that nightmare felt close. Drives stalled. The ball hit the turf. Social feeds turned toxic, and you could feel Seahawks fans thinking this might finally be the week the slow start bill comes due. Then the whole feeling of the game flipped, not with one miracle play, but with a series of body shots that Carolina could not absorb. A long burst from the run game cracked the field open. A red zone finish put real points on the board, and the crowd noise that had been ready to explode went quiet instead. On the other side of the ball, the defense squeezed the life out of the Panthers. By the time it was over, the scoreboard told a very different story than those early drives. Seattle had turned a tight, tense afternoon into a clean 27-10 win, had held Carolina under 150 total yards, and had owned third down, while the Panthers finished a shocking 1 of 11. The betting line said the Seahawks were supposed to win by around 6.5. They nearly tripled that in a game most people thought would stay close all day. That is what turns us from just another tick in the win column into a loud message to the rest of the conference. When a team can look off rhythm, commit mistakes, play in ugly weather, walk into a building where the opponent is playing for their season, and still walk out with a 17-point cushion, that tells you something deeper than any single highlight. It says the foundation is strong enough to survive bad quarters, bad series, even bad decisions, and still crush a game once the switch flips. And this Carolina test is not some random one-week spike either. It fits into a much bigger pattern, a 6-game stretch where the Seahawks keep finding new ways to win, and that longer run is where the real fear starts to build. The Seattle Seahawks are no longer on a cute hot streak, they are on a run you can trust. They have stacked 6 straight wins in every type of game, from slugfest with the Rams to grind-heavy battles against the Falcons, Colts, and Vikings. Sometimes riding the offense with Matthew Stafford across from them, other times leaning on a defense that squeezes quarterbacks like Bryce Young. The pattern is clear. Seattle turns games into long, physical nights built on steady rushing, clutch third down throws from Sam Darnold to JSN or Cooper Kupp, and a defense that limits explosives and forces checkdowns. If the passing game is slow, the ground attack and defense carry the weight. If a team sells out to stop the run, the pass rush and coverage shut the door. That flexible blueprint is built for chaotic playoff football, and the only question now is whether it marches through road stadiums or through a packed house in Seattle with a first-round bye on the line. The entire NFC is about to find out how real the Seattle Seahawks are when they face the San Francisco 49ers, a true measuring stick loaded with stars like Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, and Fred Warner. Seattle enters with 13 wins, chasing the #1 seed and a first-round bye. But they can only survive if Sam Darnold protects the ball, avoids gifting short fields to that defense, and if the offense leans on Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, while getting JSN involved early to fix the slow start problem. The health of Rashid Shaheed could swing matchups, because without him, the 49ers can load up on JSN and dare Cooper Kupp and AJ Barner to win in tight coverage. If Seattle walks into that stadium, beats San Francisco, and reaches 14 wins, the road to the Super Bowl likely runs through their home crowd. If they lose, but trade blows, and prove their defense and run game hold up on that stage, the league still learns there is no easy night against them. And that is when the real fear kicks in.